My name is Lisa Finaldi. I am the community engagement leader here at the Early Childhood Foundation, and I lead the Family Forward Initiative. And Rick?
I'm sorry, was I on mute on that? I apologize. Yeah, my name is Rick Boncier. I'm with the Children's Movement of Florida, and I lead the Bosses for Babies initiative.
Thank you. So today we're going to hear an overview about Family Forward North Carolina. I'm going to show you how we frame our story for employers. Then we will look at the playbook for licensing and a little bit about what the investment is. Then we'll stop there and have questions. And then we'll come back with Rick, and he will tell us about Bosses for Babies and their experience with the Family Forward Initiative. And we'll have more time for questions. And then to close, I'll just show you a very brief video. So just a bit about our organization. The Early Childhood Foundation is working with organizations across North Carolina to ensure that all children have a strong foundation for their health, education, and well-being. I also neglected to say that Teresa Rodensheimer, who is our executive director, is with us today. Maybe you could just give us a wave there. And at this point, before we go any further, Crystal is going to have a short poll so we can just find out a little bit more about your work in this arena.
Yes, that poll is live on your screen right now. It looks like answers are streaming in. So go ahead and cast your answer there. All right, Lisa, the results are in. Does your organization currently work to promote family-friendly policies in your state? Right now, we have 92% of the participants stating yes and 8% on no, not yet.
Great, thank you. I have a delay when I click on the slide. Sorry about that. So just a little bit more about our organization. We are working with business leaders, employers, and community leaders across the state for them to better understand the value of early childhood development, and also to create champions for our work and for the work in general about early childhood. We're also leading and supporting collaborations. So we are bringing people together for convenings to look at what are the areas of early childhood where it may need more strengthening. There may be gaps. So an example of a gap would be transition to kindergarten, and really form partnerships with groups to work to fill these gaps. State government is also engaged with us, county health departments, people across the state. And then we're also doing analysis around issues related to young children and providing policymakers with that information. For example, today we released a report about the impact of the lack of affordable childcare in rural communities, of which North Carolina is a very rural state. So that's a little bit about our role. The Family Forward Initiative grew out of an understanding that there was a gap in working with employers to identify how they can be supportive right in their workplace for families and children. And when we think about employers, we think about them as volunteers in our community or maybe sponsoring events. But we rarely think about them, or at least it has been in the past, that there's something they could actually do at work every day. So that's really the basis of the work. Our tagline is about that it's business smart, family friendly, and future ready. We are showing how the benefits to a business in a still somewhat competitive work market right now that's about recruiting, retaining, having productive workers. And if you think about for an employee around reducing stress, and also some of the issues associated with young children who are our future workforce are not really well understood by employers. And just briefly about our theory of change, it's quite simple that when we work to educate and engage employers to make changes in their workplace benefits and policies and practices, we are creating healthier, happier children and families, a stronger workforce, and a stable and thriving economy. We have a much more in-depth theory of change, but that's the essence of what it is. We have been building momentum around this work since 2019. And we started with a summit to create prominent leaders as champions. We published our guide, which we'll get into in depth here in a moment. And that was informed by advisory councils, employers, and employees. We've published 47 case studies. We work directly with 11,000 employers in the state. And also one thing that I think is particularly interesting is that we were part of the state strategic economic development plan called First in Talent, which gave us access to employers all across the state to understand the value of a family-friendly workplace. We also have a certification program. And as of today, these numbers are a little outdated, but we have at least 125 employers who are certified, representing more than 50,000 employees across North Carolina. There's other thing that I'm sure you're seeing in your state is that state employees are receiving paid parental leave. It happened in North Carolina several years ago with our past governor. Yesterday, Alabama passed it, and just a few days ago, the state of Mississippi provided that. So those are steps forward that have changed the landscape a little bit. And also we're seeing a diverse issue organizations who are joining this and thinking about prevention. And a lot of them are working around the prevention of abuse of children and also violence against adults. And just a quick lesson on brain development. I'm sure most of you know this, but again, employers have a better understanding as a result of the program with them. So we talk about brains not being born, but that they are built, and that rapid period of development is from birth to age 8. We had mentioned earlier that we look at, prenatal to 3rd grade, and that's because this is the most rapid part of development. And we know the 3rd grade reading test is a predictor of academic achievement. And these early experiences are built into your body. For example, that's why groups like Prevent Child Abuse in North Carolina are engaged, because they recognize how negative experiences are built into a body and how they can be life-lasting. A lot of employers want to understand what it costs and what the return is. And many of you know Professor Heckman from the University of Chicago looked at how we spend our public tax dollars. And he has shown that when we spend them prenatally rather than focusing more on job training, that we're going to get a much higher return on our investment. And he continues to do work in this area to bring forward more reasons why the earliest years are where we get the best for our public tax dollars. Many of you experience the same issue in your state. We are not alone in North Carolina, how we have students who are not reading on grade level by the end of 3rd grade. And also the shocking data that shows the serious problem that we have with most children of color. and how it does go on, can go on to a lifetime where our 11th graders are not meeting the readiness benchmarks for college. All this to say, these are our future workforce, and we need to ensure that they are ready for work and ready for life. So up to here, I've given you some negative information, but we really do think at it about as unleashing the potential of a child, that every child should have the best opportunity for success, and how that will ensure our state prospers. So now we'll just look a little bit about families here in North Carolina. And I always tell employers, if you don't remember any data point that I've shared with you today, I think this is truly the most important one, because what it shows is that work has not kept up with the changing family in the United States, because this is similar in other states. And what's happening is families are giving up work opportunities, they're interrupting their education. We know that students who are parents have a very difficult time completing their education, and that is impacting work every day, and also the economic mobility and financial stability of a family. Just a few slides that show what the cost is for families for childcare. We are a very growing state in North Carolina, as I know Florida is, and a few others, and the cost of housing is skyrocketing, and it's really making a dent in parents' ability to afford childcare across North Carolina. Very few people have access to paid leave. We also see that the area around disruption of work due to a lack of a predictable schedule is something people don't think about a lot, but it is a serious problem. People on hourly wage sometimes don't have more than a week of an understanding of their workplace. This is contributing to interrupting the rhythm of their family. We see that children also can have sleep problems when their parents' work schedule is changing. So this is an area where we really talk to a lot of employers about, because it really is something that can be addressed and can make a big difference. I'd also urge you to review this Surgeon General report from last fall. And as I mentioned earlier about work not understanding the changing life of a family or the changing complexion of a family, it really gets deep into what are some of the stressors for families. Some of them are clearly about work supports and the impact on parental mental health. And of course, I put in here about the reduced economic productivity, because that's what a lot of people who are working with us want to better understand. Now, if we take on this challenge and we resolve some of these challenges, we really can see things can change. We have a pool of talent who can be tapped if people can return to work, because some of these other concerns that they have can be addressed. So the Chamber of Commerce in North Carolina recently did a study that showed to up to 31,000 people could go back to work who have young children if there was affordable and available childcare in their community. So in North Carolina, our state is working hard every day to find more employees. And this is a place where, again, a difference can be made if we put our mind to it. So I mentioned to you earlier that we are looking at the research behind family-friendly workplaces. And we have not only conducted research to find out which policies are good for employers, employee, and families, but we also did a bunch of research to understand what employees and employees want. Our materials are very credible and accessible, especially accessible to employers and business leaders. Our work has been unique. There is a lot more going on in this space now. And of course, we want everybody to be able to work to support the health and well-being of children. So what does the playbook look like that we're offering for you to consider investing in today? There is a 2-page fact sheet that gives the overview of Family Forward, a multi-page strategy about what we have done to be successful in our work. Also a more in-depth theory of change. And in understanding the workplace landscape, we surveyed 300 employees and interviewed 300 employers before we started this initiative. So we'd be providing you with the survey and the interview questions that you can use to better understand your landscape. The guide to family-friendly workplaces obviously is the meat of the work, and also how to publish case studies. So the workplace guide I just mentioned very quickly is these evidence-based policies. They show you steps how to get started. And we recently updated the guide back in March, just last month. And we have added a new section about how employers can champion public policy. Because what we're finding is as we bring these employers along about what they can do in their workplace, they recognize, especially around childcare, that they need to be advocates for change. These are the policies that are on the website and in the guide. Every policy is defined. There is a sample. It shows what the benefits are to the three parties that we're talking about today. And we also look at guidance from, for example, the American Academy of Pediatrics. So where there is guidance around the policies, we provide that. And where there isn't, we look at a range of practice about what's happening across the country. So I mentioned the surveys and the phone interview questions is available and ready to go. The questions for the interviews, it is built for a professional interviewer, so it prompts you about a follow-up question as needed, but it's very easy to follow and you could adapt it as needed. Case studies are a really important part of the work because our goal is to show what's possible to other employers, to inspire change. We also tend to focus on employers that you would not expect their sector would be creating family-friendly workplaces, to show if you have a strategy and a goal that you can make change. And so one example that we're particularly excited about is we've recently updated this one around East Cut Sandwich Bar, which has 2 locations in North Carolina. They have 50 employees. When we first worked with them in 2021, they offered a few days of paid parental leave. That was when they were a young business, and that's what they could do. We just updated the case study, and since 2021, they've made big change in their parental leave policy, and it's 6 weeks at 100% for both part and full-time employees. Now that is really unheard of in many hospitality areas, and so we really want to use this one to show what's possible. So here's what the investment looks like. I went through everything that's in the packet, and it is a $3,000 investment for a license. And in addition to everything I mentioned, you would receive all the digital and print files, all the InDesign files so that you can customize it to your state, the photos, the fonts, the logos. Really, it's about your ability to customize the document. And then just a little bit about who else is using it. So this is a foundation in St. Paul, Minnesota, that has added this to their tools for employers. They really started with something much different, which is what resources can be provided to parents about child raising. But now they've taken it a step further. We also see chambers of commerce. This one's in Colorado. Also, the Missoula economic development folks are using it. In Kansas, I believe that maybe Brenda is here today from the organization, and they are Breastfeeding Coalition, and they are also using this strategy. And with that, we're going to stop and have a few opportunity for questions, and then we will get back into our conversation with Rick. You can just come off of mute and ask your questions. And if they've already been in the chat, Crystal, you can tell me about them.
And we didn't have any questions come in the chat during that first part. So yes, please feel free to come off of mute right now.
Hello, my name is Michelle Powell. I'm from Families Forward, Virginia. We're a statewide nonprofit, and we're really looking into increasing our work around family-friendly policies in our state. One of the questions that I had, do you find that there is a particular sector of business that is more receptive to this type of approach than another? And if so, what sector? And is there a sector that it's a little bit more challenging for them to wrap their heads around this?
That's a great question. I'm really glad you asked because here in North Carolina, before we started the initiative, we looked at, who is driving our state's economy. And a lot of that is around tourism. And I would say, Michelle, that those are some of the more difficult places to make change. And a lot of it has to do with, we have a history, across the country of not paying, good wages to folks in hospitality. But also there's a lot of part-time summer, students who are working in this arena. So that one can be tough. That's why I really highlight the sandwich shop because I think it shows what can happen. In terms of another one that we focused on is manufacturing because our state is a growing manufacturing state. I know we compete with Virginia for a lot of businesses to come here. That one has been more open and also more creative. For example, the issues around scheduling, they clearly understand the need to make changes there. And also they've had a big interest in childcare, I will say. Now, of course, professional organizations, law firms, accounting firms, those kinds of places, very easy because they're already making some of this change. But we are trying to focus on employees who don't have access. Other questions?
Lisa, you've got a question in the chat from Lena Harville. Are employers more compelled to pursue family-friendly practices with a business case that illustrates the ROI?
Everybody asked that, and some of it relies on them to look at what we show as a turnover calculator and asking them to sit down and go through the procedure to understand what it means in dollars and cents when you lose an employee. Now, if you're Procter & Gamble, you probably do this already because you have a professional HR staff. But for smaller businesses, this is not something that really comes into their frame very often, especially that they don't have an HR person. And the staff member doing that may be the admin who is taking on that role. But those numbers are fairly shocking. And we really ask people to reflect on that after that exercise and then compare that to what it would take to provide some of these benefits.
I've got a question here. So, in a lot of the work that I do with some employee consultation, that type of thing, I guess what has been your reaction? So a lot of times when I'm talking to someone, it might be the HR person that does do the front line kind of, yes, these are the issues that I'm always dealing with. But as they try to move further up into maybe some of those C-suite conversations, it seems like, well, we don't foresee this as a problem because they are not listening to the frontline people that are calling in, or calling out. So. I guess what has been that maybe interaction as you move up to the maybe actual decision makers?
Sure. So a lot of the work we're doing, Mike, is when we go out and work with chambers of commerce or economic development folks, we always invite both the HR leader and the CEO. And again, in these small to mid-size organizations, they come to those kinds of events because it's networking and it's the kind of places where they need to be present. So we really try to ensure that the real decision maker, is present. Sometimes it's the other way around. These HR people don't even want to bring it forward because they think about, in many ways, the complications to their job in order to bring these policies forward. So I think it's a mixed bag, but clearly having the CEO or the executive director of an organization hear it, is important. We're also trying networking amongst different businesses so they can share what they're doing and what's working and what isn't. We have a lot of employers who are certified who want to start engaging at that level.
And Lisa, you've got two more questions in the chat.
Okay.
The first is the turnover calculator or document included in the package.
The turnover calculator is on the website. You can download that at any time under the resources category.
And next question, was the NC Chamber of Commerce a partner in the 2019 summit? How did you get the real decision makers to attend?
Wow, now you're really asking me to go back in time. The event was hosted by our organization and Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina, which is a very influential organization, and also hosted by the Research Triangle Institute at their location. And so they also worked very hard to bring people to the table. The chamber was without a doubt there, as were economic development leaders, mayors, and prominent business leaders across the state. When something is new and exciting and you have, a very good influential host, I think that brings people to the table. And I think the event really paid off and that people were excited and thinking about what's possible. So I think we should probably keep rolling, yeah? Okay, I'm gonna turn this over to Rick.
Great, thank you. Like I said, my name is Rick Bonciea. I am the Director of Business Engagement for the Children's Movement of Florida. I lead the Bosses for Babies initiative. And for those of you who don't know, the Children's Movement, we are the state's leading advocates for children from 0 to 5, from birth to 5. And we've been around for about 20 years, and we're predominantly an advocacy group, and we go around the state trying to our goal is to make sure that when a child, and any child in the state of Florida, no matter the zip code, ethnicity, they all have the same opportunity. About 4 or 5 years ago, we were approached by the Florida Chamber, and they wanted us to be the leaders within that 0 to 5 space. They have a program called the 2030 Florida 2030, and they basically analyze everything that's going on in the state and how we're going to address things going forward. So that by 2030, when the state's blowing up, are we ready to handle everything? And one of the things that they really talk about is that 0 to 5 space. So about 4 years ago, we launched the Bosses for Babies initiative. And basically what it is, it's a way to salute, highlight, and celebrate organizations who actually have family-friendly business policies across the state. Very similar to all the information that was just said by Lisa. We talk about brain development. We talk about, kindergarten readiness. We talk about third grade reading levels. And what I do is I literally drive around the state, going to chambers, Rotary clubs, whoever will listen and talk about this. A couple of the points that we try to stress, and it's interesting because some of the questions that just came up kind of tie into this. The state of Florida has the Florida Chamber did a study we have it's called the Untapped Potential Report, and basically the state of Florida loses $5.4 billion, billion with a B, every year because of the child care situation. That is adding the 1.7 billion that is spent on recruitment and retention. That is lost wages. That is lost tax revenue. So when you have these kind of numbers, at a state level, it kind of opens the door. What we found is that many of the businesses in Florida, it's not that they don't care, it's that they just don't know. So part of our job is going out there, educating them. I was on the business side. I was not in anything to do with children or childcare, anything along those lines. That I never knew that by the time you're 85% of your brain is developed, or by the time you're 90%. So a lot of it is the education of the businesses, and that's what we do. And the guide that we use, we got from the Family Forward initiative, and it's terrific because within it, not only are we able to give them data and facts and all this information that is so important, but we also have surveys. We've also customized it to our own case studies. And it's one of these things where it's a living document. We actually printed it last year, but now we're adding to it online. And it's a great resource for us to go back and explain to people, hey, you want to do a survey here? Look, there's one inside the guide. You can go in and survey your company. And one of the things we stress to organizations is that most of the time a business owner will say, oh yeah, all an employee wants is money. Well, our studies show that it's not. Most of them just want the flexibility, the ability to get up and if I have to at 3 o'clock pick up a child, I can pick up the child. And when it comes to the family friendly policies, what we're trying to do is we're trying to educate businesses that this should not be seen as an expense, but as a recruitment and retention tool. We have numbers that a supported employee is a more loyal employee. And no matter how small the business, it could be something as simple as a realtor in the Naples area that created a lactation room for their team because they had two ladies who were nursing. So it's part of the education, it's part of talking to them, it's part of just saying that this is not about having, all these different things. It's about listening to your employees, it's about addressing their needs. Um, Within Florida, we're also a large service state. So we're very proud, similar to your East Cut Sandwich Shop, we have a restaurant that we're excited about in the Babson Park, which is the central part of the state, where she couldn't hire employees. So what she did was she created or converted what was called a storage room into a very safe, uh, warm place where employees could, it's almost like a transit spot where they can bring a child or a kid after school, can spend a few minutes, between going to childcare or whatever the case is. It's little things like that are making a difference. And what we do is we're just trying to educate the businesses on this. One of the things that when I started this, or when we started this, excuse me, I went too far. We started with about 23 bosses. Right now we're at 101. And what we tell the bosses is that all we want to do is take your story and share it, explain and hopefully educate others, that it's not about cost, it's about the support you give your team. So what we do is we highlight the bosses socially, we talk about their story, we talk about their background, and then we also push out their information via our social platforms. And we're constantly talking about, hey, look at this organization, this is what they're doing. And we're very conscious of the fact that it's not just large hospital organizations that are able to provide these. It's smaller organizations also that are able to support their employees, and in turn, make it a better situation for the state. Our goal, and like I said in the first, or like I showed in the first slide, is that we're trying to make Florida the family friendliest state. And like I said earlier, part of our challenge, what I have found is that most businesses care, and most businesses want to, make a difference, but they just don't know. And a lot of the ways that we do it is, I don't, if I meet an HR person or I meet somebody, it doesn't matter. I'm just positioning what we're doing and asking for an opportunity to speak to the right person or communicate with the right person. And a lot of times, once they hear about what we're doing, and this is not about asking them for money, and this is not about, you know, anything along those lines, they're very receptive to us. The only times we've had any pushback or challenges, and is when, and it's happened on two occasions where it's an organization that has multiple unions, and sometimes because of negotiations with one group or the other, they're a little hesitant to actually publicize what they're doing. But again, it's once you explain it to them and you talk to them and so on, it's been very well received in Florida. And I don't, at least I don't know if there's anything else you wanted me to cover or speak to or address or.
No, I think that I would just like to ask you a few questions and then
Please.
have the opportunity for folks to ask you some questions. So my first one is surprises. Is there something about the work that surprised you that you just didn't expect?
Well, honesty is the and I use myself as an example. I ran a business, I did a bunch of different things. It's just that, like I said, it's the fact that many businesses don't know. And once you explain to them the brain development. And the other part that's very important is the fact that as you said earlier, these third graders, we're going to hire them in 10 to 15 years. If we're not getting them ready, who are we going to hire in 15 years? It's that kind of education that um, it's making a difference. And if I had to say a surprise, it's the lack of understanding of the overall industry and the overall need that we have for our children. And then one other thing that I love to point out, especially when I'm talking to a group of business leaders, is that the state of Florida is suffering a huge brain drain of women leaving the workforce. And studies in Florida show that over 60% of the persons in college are female, over 60% of the persons in graduate school are female, and over 60% of the people in postgraduate school are female. Yet, when time comes, they're the ones that leave the workforce when it comes to a childcare situation. So when you explain the business necessity for the overall state, a lot of people start to say, "Okay, I get it."
That's good. I hadn't thought about that one before. Thanks for the tip. How about recruitment? How do you recruit bosses?
I'm one of the easiest ways actually when I'm trying, let's say I'm looking at an organization, I just go to their recruitment page as to, their career page and see who they're hiring and what they're hiring. And a lot of times they will talk about their benefits, they will talk about all the great things they offer. The other thing is this, that I have found that I am very active on LinkedIn and I'm constantly posting our new bosses and talking about all the places we've been. I was never a real social person when it came to social media, but it's made such a difference because we've had businesses who've called me and said, "Hey, so and so in Tampa is doing this. I'm doing something similar. Can I be a boss?" So it's the social has made a huge impact for us. We partner with multiple chambers. I actually follow the president of the Florida Chamber around when he's holding an event or a conference. He knows me. We have a great relationship. With us overall, and he'll start talking about the issues in their community, and he'll point. By the way, if you want more information, there's Rick in the back, and it has made a difference. But my easiest way to recruit is target businesses, look online and figure out exactly what they're doing within their benefits, and then I reach out to them.
Gotcha. Okay, I think the other questions I was going to ask you, you answered during your presentation time. So I'd like to open it up to questions because it looks like there might be several, Crystal.
Sure, we have some coming in the chat already, so we can start there. So Pat mentioned, Rick, the fact that you're a man delivering these messages seems strategically smart. Can you comment on that?
It's interesting because one of our VPs, Rocio Velasquez, who was one of the persons that hired me, she kind of said that, and it didn't register at first. And now I can see that because, um, like the comment I just said about the women leaving the workforce and the women, are the ones that are getting the degrees in higher education. That one really resonates with the males. Now, the fact that I'm a man and I'm an older man, I think probably makes a difference also because I'm able to talk to them, especially with my business background, let's say. But I didn't realize until I got into the position that, yeah, it makes a difference. And I can actually talk to some of the business folks, very honestly about it. So I hope that answers it.
And Michelle is interested in the untapped potential report that you had mentioned. Is that unique to Florida and could that be shared?
Well, you go to the floridachamber.com and they have it there. Just like the Florida Chamber, and this is specific to Florida. I don't know if any other state did it. This was a real big deal because the Florida Chamber is huge into this. The other thing that I will recommend that everybody look at, it's really cool. It's the floridascorecard.com. It's a site that the Florida Chamber created, and basically it's you can drill down to the zip code level almost. But if you start at the county level, you can get everything from poverty levels to unemployment to hiring to third grade kindergarten readiness. And it to us, it's a big deal because to have a business organization leading this, which is the Florida Chamber. I mean, I hate to say this, and one of the very first presentations I made, I was asked if we were funded by some left-wing radical group. And I'm never at a loss for words, but I was actually at a loss for words, and I actually had to take them to our website and show them who our funders are. We're nonpartisan. We have funding from both sides. And that was one of the original challenges that we faced. So the fact that the Florida Chamber, which is a 100% business driven organization, is supporting us makes a big deal. So the untapped potential, like I said, is on their site. You can access it. I think it was a Florida specific study. So we were very fortunate to have that and be able to use those numbers.
I will say that many other states have done untapped potential working with the US Chamber. And so if your state has done one of those and you want to note it in the chat, that would be great.
And the next question in the chat is kind of for both of you. This is a good one. What is your certification process for designating a leader as a boss for babies? And then for Lisa, a family forward organization. What metrics do they have to meet? How do you monitor maintenance of their policies or actions that are family friendly?
Lisa, you want to go first?
Sure. So our certification is based on the policies that I showed you, the slide with the pillars on it, the green slide. And employers have to have a minimum of 5 employees working in the state of North Carolina. Anyone working over 30 hours a week has to have access to the benefits. And then there is a questionnaire about those 19 policies that are on our website. We have a scoring system and a weighting system based on those policies in order to score an employer. They have to provide their handbook, so we could do some checking. They say policy X exists, but it's not in the handbook. And we also have an employee survey that has to be circulated where we would receive the responses so that we can give employers a better understanding around what their employees need and what they don't need or what they don't want. And its certification is for 2 years. So that is the basis for it. We think it's a very robust system. When we look around the country, many other organizations are doing awards programs, but there are a few other types of certifications like ours.
We are slightly different. We don't have a certification program per se. What we do is we, of course, study the company, do background research on it, and we speak to the boss and or depending on the size of the organization, HR and so on. In our case, you can be a boss based on if you're meeting one of the 5 criteria or the 5 areas of paid leave, the scheduling, health and wellness, childcare and or accommodation. With some smaller business, we don't want to leave them out. Like I said, we have a realtor in Naples. They're very small. There are 6 people, and it's the lactation room component that is something we want to talk about and promote. So we're slightly different with that. We're trying to get the message and recognize as many businesses now. Part of my job is making sure that there isn't anything strange going on. And on a couple of occasions, I've been approached by a couple of organizations that we would not accept because, frankly, we've things have been written about them and they've gone through some issues that we don't want to be used as, hey, look, how can you criticize me for this when I'm considered a family-friendly policy, company organization through bosses. So we're slightly different in that sense, and we're more about trying to highlight what the organization is doing within those 5, the same 5 that you have.
Gotcha. Crystal, how many more questions do we have?
There are no more questions in the chat, but thank you so much to Mike and Grace. They're dropping in those reports in the chat for those that are interested in accessing them. Yeah.
That's great. Oh, Grace, it's so nice to see you. It's been a very long time. Okay, so if we could put the slides back up, Crystal, that would be fantastic. Okay. So here's the video I mentioned to you about economic development organization in North Carolina that has really embraced family forward and the family-friendly workplaces. And I think it's a testament to how we can really move businesses and influential business organizations.
If family-friendly policies are more widely adopted and they lead to a workforce that is more engaged, in my mind, that leads to a workforce that is also more productive. And the more productive of a workforce that our employers experience, whether they are small businesses or multinational Fortune 500s, if they have the kinds of policies that lead to a more engaged and productive workforce, I feel like that can only benefit the reputation of North Carolina as a place to do business and as a place where employers can tap into the best and the brightest. It not only allows our people to feel like they have that balance, but from a reputation standpoint, we know we're going to continue to have to hire and attract the best to do this kind of work. And if our reputation precedes us in a positive way about some of these accommodations and flexible policies we've made, I feel like that's going to enable us to better attract the kind of people that we want doing this very important work.
Thank you, Crystal. So just in closing, maybe.
Family-friendly policies are
Here we go. Sorry about that. So here's how you can reach us. I'll also put my email address in the chat. We hope you'll follow us on LinkedIn. We do have a lot going on there and talking about our certified employers and other work that we're doing. You could sign up for our newsletter. And people in North Carolina, that's the bottom piece. It's about working with us. We also, we don't only do workshops, but we create panels to bring different types of organizations to the table. I would also encourage you to consider whether or not joining your state chamber, joining a local chamber, if there's an area where you work a lot, or the Economic Development Association in your state. We kind of went back and forth about this. Sometimes they're inexpensive, sometimes they're not. But being a member really provides you with a lot more access to other members. And I think that's we're starting to see what that looks like in North Carolina. I will also just ask you if your name wasn't changed from my name, because a few people had my link. If you could do that, we really want to follow up with you before you leave. And we will be providing the slides, and also we'll be doing some editing and have the recording available as well. So we still have a few minutes. If anybody has any last minute questions or thoughts, we can take them. Looks like Shelby might have a question.
Yeah, it says here, have you run into a scenario where a whole city government would like to be designated as family friendly? And was that process different to the typical process?
Well, I love that question. Thank you. We do have some municipalities and county governments who are certified. The city of Greensboro, Guilford County, and then a small town, which is called Reedsville, North Carolina. So far, that's who we have certified. And the process really isn't different at all. I would say they are more quickly responsive because public employers tend to have very clear policies. There's no sort of fuzzy or middle ground where you can't quite, tell what's going on. So in fact, I think their process tends to move a lot faster. Okay. Well, I wanted to thank everybody for taking time today. I know it's a very busy time and there's just so much going on, a lot of instability right now. So I look forward to hearing from you again. Like I said, we'll be sending out some information post the meeting and would love to talk to you about the program. And we always have to thank our sponsors, the Institute of Medicine and also the Department of Health and Human Services, in addition to many foundations who support the work at the Early Childhood Foundation. I hope everyone has a nice afternoon. Take care.